Hi everybody, this is week 3, Container to Table. I'm Shannon Wright, and we are showing you things that you can do to help feed your family and minimize any effects you may feel from supply chain interruption or food deserts in your area and all of that sort of thing. This is week 3, so I wanted to start by showing you some of the things that were planted in week 1 and week 2. So in week 1, we planted these, which are black beans. They have broken through the seeds, they've grown up, they've got their primary leaves, and as soon as they get their secondary leaves, which are just starting to bud, they'll be ready to be transplanted. So that's gonna be at least another couple of weeks. Here, we have asparagus beans, which are long beans, and when I say long, they grow to like the bean itself is like 18 inches. It's a pole bean, which means it grows up, not bushes. The beans are long. They have a flavor reminiscent of asparagus. It's a combination of asparagus and black-eyed peas and string beans. Really interesting, but a good flavor. And when they grow really fast, and they are prolific. So a good source of feeding your family. A lot of nutritional stuff. Also from week 1, still small, but definitely strong, the radishes. So these, in another couple of weeks, will start to get their secondary leaves. They'll get a little bit stronger. I'll add a little bit of light dirt and peat moss to make it light enough because they're very fragile stalks. They come up thin. And in a couple of weeks or so, they'll be ready to transplant as well. From week 2, last week, we planted a bunch of things, but 2 of the things that we planted were basil, Monmouth basil to be specific, and they are in here. Now, if you remember, I was saying that fast food containers are a really great way of starting your garden and sowing your seeds indoors and making like a mini terrarium. So this is Monmouth basil. It's in a takeout container with its own little ecosystem in there, if you will. And they're small, but each one of these will be a basil plant, and they'll get big and bushy, and you'll have lots of wonderful basil. If you grow it, if you keep it indoors, it'll make your house smell great. If you keep it outdoors, it might grow a little faster depending on how far into the sun you can get it. But these are all going to be big, bushy Monmouth basil plants. And over here, let's get this covered back up because we don't want to damage anything that we've taken the time to start to grow. In this container are leeks. A lot of you probably know what leeks are, but they are big, fat onions. They are about 1/4 in circumference. They are usually grown in sandy dirt, and they're very oniony. A lot of people use them in soups and rices, vegetable dishes, all that sort of thing. And we planted these last week. They're just starting to come up. They're little teeny tiny. They almost look like bent chives at the moment. But they will get much taller and straighter, and the stalks will get thicker. And they like a really light and sandy soil. So in the coming weeks, we'll get into things like the different types of soil for different things, what needs how much light and how much water and all of that. But I just wanted to show you some things that have already come up from week 1 and week 2. Now, we're going to continue to plant. One of the things that's really key and important is to continue to plant. I should stress, when you're planting, clearly and obviously, you're working with dirt. And as some of you may see, the evidence kind of shows. So you may want to, if you're really going to get serious about this, you may want to get a gardening apron or wear dark colors that you don't really care about too much. So I digress. Set up on the table, because we're going to plant some things this week while I talk to you about some of the reasons and the benefits of doing this. We've got our dirt, which is already pre-mixed. But to add to it, we've got our wood chips, which we put in at the bottom of the container, again, for proper soil drainage. And then peat moss and perlite, depending on what we're planting, to be able to lighten up and loosen the soil. It also helps with drainage, especially the perlite. So, again, we talked about before the importance of sowing your seeds indoors about 4 months before the anticipated last frost. And as I said, from my area where I am in Baltimore, we're at that point about now. So we're growing all of these seeds. We're putting them in the window. Maybe next week we'll get into this a little bit more, but behind me you might be able to see is a shelf that's got some of the things that we'd already planted and that are growing and established and all of that sort of thing. We'll get into that next week. So you want to get yourself together and you want to dive into the dirt. So I have talked about the importance of gardening and planting for a long time. Now, one of the reasons is because it's just healthier. You know what you're eating, you know where it came from, you know what was put in it. The other reason is if you are in an area like we are with a large amount of food deserts, there are roaming shortages, things you can and can't find. This week, for us, bell peppers, hard to find. Now, in the greenhouse, which in the coming weeks we will show you as well, we have some bell peppers growing. I think before the bell peppers, the shortage was eggs and different things. My point is, the more of this you do, the less of that will matter to you in your family. Now, we're going to need to get to the dirt. So we're going to take some dirt. We're going to fill the container a little more than halfway, because you don't want your seeds to have to go through a whole heck of a lot to be able to come up, depending on what it is you're planting. Actually, I'm going to take some of this out because we are planting beans, and beans are pretty hardy and thick-stalked and can pretty much come through on their own. So we're doing, what are these? Pinto beans, I believe we're doing right now. Yep. Pinto beans produce a lot of beans. It's a really good source of fiber. They grow pretty easy and quickly. They are blight and disease resistant. You're probably wondering, what the heck is blight and disease on plants? We'll get to that. It's not like a corona kind of virus or blight or disease, but your plants can be subjected to disease, which would mean you're not going to get what you want out of them. So you put your seeds in. For these, they grow pretty big and the leaves get pretty big, so I usually only put 3 in a spot, which means that in this 4-pack tray, I can grow 12 plants. So I know that I want a lot of pinto beans. They grow pretty quickly. They produce a lot of nutrient-rich beans, which are great for fiber. So I'm going to plant 2 dozen of them. Now, another thing that needs to be mentioned is that there's those that will tell you that 50% of what you plant will actually grow. So if that is the average and that is true, if I plant 2 dozen, I might get a dozen. Now, we've been pretty fortunate in the last years that we get 80% of what we plant comes up and grows. But that's because we pay attention to what we're doing in the soil and all that other stuff. And as I'm hoping you guys will as well. So we're doing our second tray of pinto beans. Next week, we're going to do something I really like to do, and it's kind of special. We're going to focus on things that you can start to grow and start to cut and eat in 30 days. And you may be wondering, well, what in the heck can you grow and cut and start to be able to eat from in 30 days? Tune in next week and you'll see. So we're finishing our second tray of pinto beans. And it's really pretty simple. So we're going to get those in. So now we've got 2 dozen pinto beans that are going to be planted. Now I could push the envelope and put extra seed in each one, which would give me an extra 8 plants. But I don't know that I really want to do that now. Because the other thing is, you do need to do some staggered growth. Meaning, things that I plant in the first week of January, I'm going to plant another go around in the first week of February. And then I'll spread it out to 6 weeks. So the middle of March, I'll plant again, because your beans may produce a bumper crop 1 week and then start to die out. So to have a steady supply throughout the growing season, you really need to be planting a new batch of seeds every 4 to 6 weeks. I know you may say, well, what the heck? But trust me on this. So the seeds I plant in the beginning of April or sometime in April will be growing towards the middle and the end of the summer. I will plant new seeds up through probably June, and then I will probably stop. But that's me. Depending on where you are and how long your growing season is, if you've established your greenhouse and a host of other variables will determine for you when you stop planting and the end of your grow season. So right now we've got the pinto beans in, again, 2 dozen. And we're going to, since this dirt already has a lot of what it needs in it, I want it a little bit lighter. So for the area that I'm going to use, I'm adding a little bit more peat moss and perlite. So I'm going to mix that right in here. And then what I just mixed up in is lighter right here. I'm going to use to cover over my seeds. And then this tray is done. I'm going to do the same thing on the second tray. And then we are done. Now, COVID has made it kind of important to really try and take care of your family and do the things that you need to do. These are things that most of us should have been doing, or all of us should have been doing anyway. But those of us that live in food deserts, there is no excuse. There are things you can do to be able to feed your family and get healthy while you do it. So we've got our pinto beans planted. We've got a bunch of other seeds out that we're going to plant. For me, I try to plant 1 day a week and plant at least a dozen different things. It's a lot of work, but the payoff is great. So again, my name is Shannon Wright. This is the Urban Engagement Initiative. This project is Fish and Five Loaves, which stems from the Container to Table series. We will be back next week again, things that you can grow and start to use within 30 days. I hope this has been helpful. You can message me and find me on Facebook at Urban Engagement Initiative or Pastor Shannon Wright directly. Message me if you have a question. Let me know what area you live in. I can tell you what zone you're in, what your planting calendar should be like. As we go through this, we're going to get into how to stretch your food budget by doing meal plans and how to put those together as well, what your pantry should look like. And later on down the line, we will even get into canning so that you have an excess of more than you can eat fresh, organizations you can share it with, or how to can it to preserve it and be able to use it for your family in the fall and winter. And we'll get into all that then. Again, my name is Pastor Shannon Wright. This has been another segment of Container to Table, which is a part of the Fish and Five Loaves project, coming out of the Urban Engagement Initiative. Stay safe, stay healthy. Message me if you have any questions, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.